Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode we created a zombie spawner, so now we have a point in our map that spawns zombies and we can control the delay between the spawns, we can create waves of zombies and we can just use it to spawn zombies in our map, and then we can also kill the zombies and spawn new zombies. In this episode, we want to start working on the main menu and the saving of the game. Now, we really don't have a lot to save because this is not some kind of adventure game. We don't have a lot of data. All we are going to have is some kind of high score that will keep track of the highest wave we survived. So it's a more arcadey game, and the player can always try to beat the high score by surviving for more waves. So the first thing we want to do is create a new scene that will be the main menu scene. So we go into our scenes folder and we create a new scene and we name it main menu. Then we open this scene, and the first thing we're going to create inside before we start with the UI is create the save load manager. So we're going to create an empty object and name it save load manager, and inside we're going to have a script with the same name, save load manager. The save load manager is going to be a singleton, so we can go to one of our singletons, for example our HUD manager. We're going to copy the awake method and paste it inside, and we're also going to copy this static part over here and paste it and rename it to save load manager. But this time it needs to be a bit different, because when we're going to instantiate this object in the main menu scene, we still want to keep it in our game scene. We don't want this to be destroyed. But the way a singleton works is that when we load the new scene, it's going to find this object and it's going to destroy the other one and create the new object. At the moment, we don't even have this object in our game scene. But if we're going to create the same object in our game scene, it will simply destroy this one and create a new one. And that's not a good thing, because maybe we want to save information inside this save load manager. So we don't want it to be overwritten by the one that is in the game scene. So for this, we're going to add a line over here, and the line will be don't destroy on load, and it means that we don't even have to create another copy of this save load manager inside the game scene. We can simply create this one over here, and then when we start the game scene, it will simply transfer into that scene and it's not going to be destroyed. So with this line, we can make this happen. Next, we want to add some kind of string that will be the high score name that we're going to save inside the saving system. So public string high score key, because we need some kind of name to reference when we access the saving system to get the high score. So you can name it whatever you want, but we're going to name it best wave saved value. So we know exactly what is this value that we're trying to find. Now we're going to have two methods, one for saving and one for loading. So public void save high score, and this will save our high score. And by high score, I mean the highest wave that the player reached. We also want to create a loading method, so load high score, but this time we want to return an integer because it's going to return us the high score as an integer. So inside the save high score, we're going to use the player pref in order to save the high score. So player pref is a very easy and simple way to save data in Unity. So we use the player pref. We can simply say player pref set int, and we simply want to save an integer into the player pref. So we need to give it a name, and the name will be this high score key, and then we pass inside the score itself, which is this integer. So we need to pass it into this method, and it's going to save this value into a key that is named best wave saved value, and it's going to save it into the player pref. Then when we want to load this high score, we need to simply go and find this name, and it's going to give us this score. So we want to check if this exists, because when we start the game for the first time, we're not going to have anything saved. So we don't want to just load this thing because it's going to crash. So we need to first check if this name even exists, if this key even exists. So if player pref has key high score key, then we're simply going to return the player pref get int high score key. If we don't have this, we're simply going to return 0 because we probably don't even have any high score, so it should stand on 0. Now we can save this and go back into Unity, and we can see the high score key over here, but we don't even need this to be visible, so we can make it private. Let's just remove this because this is not relevant. This is just so we can use it over and over without hard coding it. So we have the save load manager, and the next thing we want to do is create some kind of simple UI. So let's create an image. Let's place this over here so we can see how it looks. Then we can simply click on this image, press on Alt over here, and then press on Alt and stretch the image so it will cover the entire screen. For now, let's just make it black or white, it doesn't matter. Next, we want to create a title that will display the high score. So over here, we're going to create a UI Text Mesh Pro, and we're going to make it black for now. Actually, let's make it white, and let's make the background black. Eventually, we're going to change this to some kind of picture. Then we're going to take the text and we're going to change the font to the font that we use in this game. We're going to position it somewhere at the top so we can click here, press Alt, and anchor it to the top, and then just lower it down. And for the initial text, we could say something like top wave survived 0. Let's also make the entire text box a bit bigger. So this will be the high score. Next, we also want to create buttons. So we go over here and we add a button, Text Mesh Pro. We can increase its size. We can press Alt and then drag, and it's going to simply increase its size without moving it, and it's going to increase its size and still stay in the middle. So we can make it something like that. Of course, it really depends on your game. We're going to change the text inside to be start. We're going to change the font to our font. We're going to change the color of the text to white. And the inside of the button is going to be black. We also want to add some kind of outline to the button, so we can simply use the outline, not the script, but the one that is built in Unity. And then we can simply change this to white, make it fully opaque, and then increase the border to something like that. Let's also increase the size of the text. And now we can duplicate this button and have another one underneath it, somewhere over here. And this time we're going to rename the text to exit. So this will take us out of the game itself. And that's pretty much all. Of course, in your game, you can add options, you can have settings, you can have more information over here. Now I want to change the image to be something more appealing. So inside the art folder, I found this image over here. Of course, we need to import it as a sprite first. but then we're going to drag it into the source image. And now we need to make this white again so it will be visible. And now it looks much better. We can also lower this a bit more so it will be visible. Now we want to add some functionality to all of this UI. So over here, we're going to add a new object and we're going to name it main menu. We're going to add a script with the same name. Inside the main menu script, we're going to have a string that will be the name of the next scene. And this is just so we can load it without actually hard coding the name. So string new game scene. And if you have some kind of scene in between, maybe you want to load this scene and not the main scene, but we're going to use the sample scene because that's the only scene that we have. And we also want to have a text mesh pro for the high score UI. So public tmp text high score UI. And of course we need to use this. And now inside the start method, we are going to set the high score text. So first of all, we're going to have a high score integer, and we're going to load it from our loading system. So when we start the game, we need to load it and get our high score. So we simply find our save load singleton, we go inside of it, and we run this method load high score. So this will return an integer and it's going to store it inside this high score variable. And then we're simply going to use our high score UI and we're going to set the text to be the high score. So it's going to change it if we have something, and if it's the first time we run the game, it's simply going to show 0, exactly the way it is right now. Now we need two more methods to start the game and to exit the game. And of course, all the other logic that you need, for example, if you're going to have a settings menu and things like that, everything will happen inside of this class. So we're going to have a method for starting a new scene, or just starting a new game, right? So we need to use the scene manager, load scene, and we're going to provide it with the name of our scene. So the name of the scene has to be exactly named as this scene over here because it's the sample scene. This is our main game scene. So that's why we have it spelled the same way, and then we simply provide it and load this scene. Now we need to also say that we're using the scene manager. So using scene manager, it's going to add it at the top. And that's all we need to do to start the game because it will simply start this new scene. Next, we also want to have a method to exit our game, right? To exit our application. We don't want to just exit our application using Alt F4. So we're going to have a method named public void exit application. And we can simply say application quit, and it's going to close the entire game. Now, you may want to test this out inside the editor, but if you're going to press the button and run this code when you're inside the editor, it's not going to actually exit the game because you're not running the game, you're just running the editor. So for this, we can simulate it also in the editor. For this, we can use a syntax that is used in Unity, and we can say something like that: if Unity editor. So if we're actually inside our editor, we're going to do something, but else, so if we're in the actual build of the game, we are going to quit the application. And over here we have this end if. So this is useful for different things. And if we're inside the Unity editor, we're simply going to take our Unity editor, editor application is playing, false. So if we press on this button when we're inside the editor, it will simply close and stop playing. But if we're in the actual game, it will actually close the application. Otherwise, nothing will happen if you press on this button when you're inside the editor. So it's a simple if, and it checks if we're inside the Unity editor or if we are in the actual build of the game. But if you don't care about this, you can simply only use this line and everything will work in the real game. But we're going to leave this way. So now we need to add this functionality to the buttons. So let's also rename this to be start button and this to be exit button. So when we click on the start button, we want to run this method. So for this, we can simply go over here and add an onClick event. We're going to drag the main menu object over here and we're going to find this method, start new game. So when we click on this start button, it will run this method. The same way, we're going to go to our exit button. We're going to drag the main menu inside and we're going to find this exit application method. So it's going to run this method. And of course, before we start the game, we also need to click on the main menu and add the high score UI. So we're going to take this and drag it over here. Let's rename this to UI. So now we have the reference over here. So now the game is running and you can see that it says 2 instead of 0, and that's just because I already tested this out before, so it saved a value into the player pref. If you are testing your game and you have some values inside the player pref, you can simply clear this by going to Edit, Clear All Player Pref. So it's going to remove all the saves that you have inside the player pref. So let's do this. And now when we run the game, it should be 0 again. So we can see 0. So now if I click on exit, it's going to exit the game. In our case, it's going to close the editor. And if we press on start, it should start the game scene, but we're going to get an error and I'm going to explain to you how to fix this error. So if I click on the exit, it's going to simply close this. But if I press on start, it's going to start the game, but there's going to be an error. And the error is something that you're going to get. I didn't get it because I already fixed this, but you're going to see something like that. It will give you a lot of these errors that are basically saying that some of the models that you're using did not enable reading and writing. And that's just relevant to some of the models that I used with the assets that I showed you. Maybe you're not going to get it if you did not use these models, but if you did use the weapon models, then you're going to get this error. And it's a very simple fix, so don't worry. I already did this, so that's why I don't get any errors. So to fix this, simply go to your prefabs, go to your pistol, or any other weapon that you have. Then inside you're going to have the actual meshes for the different parts. So go to the mesh and it's going to bring you into the meshes folder of your asset. And then all you need to do is, for example, select the pistol. Let's just close this. So you have the entire pistol. You don't need all of these parts, just the pistol. You open the model tab and over here you simply need, where was it? You simply need to select read and write. So it's going to be like this for you. Simply click and enable read and write. And you need to do this for all the models that you use. So we used the pistol, we used the M16. So make sure the M16 is also enabled over here, read and write. We also use the ammo box. Then we also had the smoke grenade, but the smoke grenade was in a different asset pack, so we're going to deal with this in a moment. And we also had the grenade, so go to your grenade and enable it. Basically any model that you used, because you need to make sure that you can read and write it. So for the smoke grenade, we can simply go to the prefab. Where was it? Not here. The prefabs that we had. We have the smoke grenade. And if you want to find the actual mesh, you can simply click on one of these parts and then click on the mesh. It's going to bring you to the actual assets pack and you can find the entire grenade. So make sure that read and write is enabled, okay? And after you do all of this and you run the game, you're going to see that all of these errors are gone. So now if we run the game, everything should work, but it's not going to save our high score. So for example, we pass the first wave of zombies, nothing is going to happen. And that's because we're still not saving the actual score. So for this, we open the global references script because we want to be able to access the number of the wave. For now, we have the number of the wave inside the zombie spawn controller, and that may not be the best place to keep it. Maybe we want to have some kind of wave controller, but we're going to keep it this way. And inside we have this current wave UI, and we also have the current wave, and that's the value that we want to get. But we cannot get it from other places in our script because the zombie controller is not a singleton. So for this, we're going to create another variable inside the global references, and then we're going to be able to update it and reference it from other places. So public int, and this will be wave number, and then inside the zombie spawn controller, each time we increase the wave, so let's find it over here. When we increase the wave, we're also going to update it inside the global references singleton. Wave number will be the current wave. Of course, we also want it to happen when we start the game, when it's 0. So over here, we're going to set it to be 0. Then we go into our player script. And the reason we go over here is because we have this show game over UI. Because at this point, we want to save the high score. When the player is dead, we want to know what is the last wave that he survived, and we can get the high score. So after we do all of this, we're going to simply have a value, wave survived, and we're going to get it from the global references, wave number, and then we're going to find our save load manager, and we're going to save the high score, and we need to provide it with the wave survived. But right now it's going to save the last wave that we had, and we don't want this because the last wave that we had was the wave that killed the player, so he did not survive this wave. So we need to reduce it by 1 to get the last wave, because that's the wave that he actually survived. So this way we get the last wave and we can save it into the high score. And again, I just want to remind you, we don't have this singleton inside our scene. You can see it. We did not add it over here, but because we're starting the game from the main menu scene, the save load manager is going to transfer into the game scene, and it's going to exist here when we actually run the game. So if you're going to start the game scene from this scene, you may run into errors because it's going to try to save your score, but you're not going to have any kind of save load manager. So from this point on, always start the game from the main menu, okay? Otherwise, things are going to crash. So let's see that everything is working so far. We have the main menu. Let's start the game. We have the first wave. Now there are some visual glitches, that's just because we're playing it inside the editor and the FPS is just going wild. Let's kill all of these zombies. Let's survive the first wave. So we survived the first wave. Let's wait for the second wave and then let's just die in the second wave. Let's just let them kill us. We can see the health going down. And now we are dead. So at this point, the high score is already saved, but we don't have any way to go back to the main menu or to start a new game, so it doesn't really matter. We can simply close the game. The data is already saved. So now when we start a new game, it should already load our data. You can see we have one over here because that's the top wave that we survived. And now we have this information stored inside the player pref. And again, I want to remind you, if you want to clear this, you can simply go to Edit, Clear All Player Pref. So we know that everything is working. And if we're going to play and beat the third or fourth wave, it's going to update this and we're going to see a new value. Now, there is something small that we overlooked, and what will happen right now, it will basically save over here, it will save the survived wave. So if we reached wave 10, right, and we died, it will say that we reached and survived wave 9. But what if we play the game again and then we die on the 5th wave? Then it's still going to save the 4th wave and it's going to delete the 9th wave. But that's not the way high scores are working. It should only save the high score if it's bigger than the previous high score, right? So let's fix this. So for this we can simply say if wave survived -1 is bigger, and then we need to load the actual wave survived that we have. So save load manager, load high score. So we're going to check if the high score that we have saved is smaller than the one that we are trying to save right now. Only then save it into the player pref. Otherwise do nothing. So now we want to test this. We want to be able to survive a higher wave. And then if we survive a lower wave, it should not override the higher wave. Let's also clear the survived high score. And let's start testing. So right now we're going to survive about 3 waves. And then we're going to survive 1 wave and see if it's not actually overwriting it. So we survived the first wave. We survived the second wave. And we survived the third wave. So now on the 4th wave, we are going to die, and it should save the 3rd wave as the high score. So let's go over here. Okay, so now we're dead. It's going to save 3 as the highest wave. And now we can exit the game. We're going to start it again. We should see 3 as the highest wave. And now if we start the game and we survive 1 wave, it should not overwrite it. So we survived the first wave, and now let's die and see if it's actually not saving it. So you can see that it still kept wave number 3 because even though we survived the first wave, it was lower than the highest wave. And now if we're going to survive more waves, it will only save the highest wave. Now, we also want to go back to the main menu after we die. Of course, you can add a button, maybe you want to restart the game, maybe you want to do something else, but we're going to automatically go back to the main menu. So inside the player over here, after we show the game over UI and after we save the high score, we're going to start a new coroutine and we're going to return to main menu. Let's generate this method. And over here, we're going to have a small delay. And we're going to simply load our main menu scene. So it's very simple. And again, as I told you, you can have a button that will allow you to go to the main menu or maybe restart the game. Another thing that I want to do is add some kind of background music to the main menu. We're not going to create any kind of sound manager because we're only going to have a few sounds over here, so we can do it inside the main menu. So let's open the main menu script and we can go to our sound manager just to copy the code. And what we need is one audio clip, one audio source, and that's basically it. So we go over here and inside the main menu, let's add public audio clip and public audio source. And then we can simply say that in the beginning of the scene, main channel, play background music. And of course, if we start the game, we want to close this. So over here, we say main channel, stop playing anything. So inside the main menu, we need to add an audio source. And we're going to drag it over here. We're going to say, well, we can actually keep it this way, play on awake, but we already do it inside the start method, so it doesn't matter. We can lower the volume a bit so it won't be very high. And then we need to drag the clip for the music. I found this main menu music, so I'm going to drag it inside. And now let's see that everything is working. Of course, we can also add some kind of fade-in music for the beginning of the game. And now let's just die, so it will take us to the main menu. So you saw that it took us to the main menu rather fast and there was not enough time for the game over UI to be shown. So we can add a longer delay over here, right? We can wait a bit more, for example, 4 seconds, but you can play around with this. So I want to announce that this is basically the end of this series. Obviously, there are a lot of things that we can add, a lot of functionalities, or just polishing the game. So these are things that you need to do for your own specific game because it's not something I can cover. Each game will be different. Each game will have its own style and its own features. In this series, I just wanted to show you some general concepts for the FPS genre. And although this is the end of the series, if I see that many of you ask for something in the comments, something that is related to the FPS system that I still forgot, and I see that there is a big demand, then I will probably create some extra episodes in the future. But again, if it's something that is related to gaming in general, I will probably not do it in this series, but I will do it in other series. Yes, I saw that many people asked for multiplayer or things like that, but this is something that is not specifically related to FPS. I'm going to have a multiplayer series somewhere in the future. I just need more time. I don't have enough time to work on my channel, and in the spare time that I have, I do these episodes. So eventually I am going to have a multiplayer series, but if you have something specific for the FPS genre, something related, maybe questions for things that you want to know how to do that we did not cover, for example, how to add something to our weapon system, then you can ask me in the comment section. And if you see a comment that someone is asked and you want to know the same thing, just comment on the same comment, maybe leave a like on the same comment, so I will see this comment and I will know that a lot of people want to know the same thing. And this is just the end of this one series. I'm still working on the survival series, and now that I have one less series to work on, I can focus on starting the next series that I've been planning for a while. So thank you for watching. If you actually followed along the entire series, let me know in the comment section if you actually watched all of these episodes and you reached this part. I really thank you. Please leave a like, please subscribe if you are just a casual visitor. It will help me a lot and it will be a really good way to support me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you around in the next series.